This is Flipping the Script podcast, the soon-to-be #1 leadership podcast for purpose-driven leaders and great guest experts who give us a unique insight into what leadership looks like behind the scenes. I'm Shalia Stafford, your host, and I'm committed to helping you lead your challenges using leadership strategies to gain new perspectives, fuel your growth, and transform the way you execute on your success. Welcome back, everyone. It's Shalia here. Building a career, a family, and a business grounded in values and rooted in strategy is a craft our guest expert, Bill Dwight, is no stranger to. As many of you know, finding creative ways to build a toolbox of strategies, experiences, and self-awareness fuels the work that I do today to help purpose-driven leaders consciously create generational wealth and health. And the beauty is that life provides us many opportunities to explore new tools and new ways to gain perspectives, fuel our growth, and transform the way we execute. Today, we'll be exploring a tool that is helping families across the nation raise financially savvy children and what it really means to run a mission-driven business and life. I am so thrilled to introduce our guest expert today, Bill Dwight, who is the CEO of FamZoo.com, a husband, a father of 5. FamZoo is an online family banking service that teaches kids good money habits. FamZoo won a Finovate Best In Show award in 2013 for its unique integration with prepaid cards. As a Princeton graduate and former Oracle executive, Bill has built software in diverse areas ranging from artificial intelligence to personal finance. Today, he is leading in the most important role as chief dad with the mission to bring financial literacy to 40 million American kids through parent-moderated payment technology. Bill, welcome. I am so thrilled to share your experience and journey as a dad and a founder. Thank you for sharing the next 30 minutes with us.
Well, thank you for having me, Shalia. And a little update to the bio. I'm a grandpa of one, too.
What? Congratulations.
I got to update the bio. It's been for like 2 years now.
Oh, look at that. Is it a boy
Chief
or a girl?
Grandpa, I guess, is my new moniker. That's a girl.
Oh, congratulations. Okay.
And it's everything they say it is. It's all upside. It's good stuff.
Alrighty. So as a tradition on the show, we like to ask our guest experts a few fire away questions to get to know you a little bit better. Shall we fire away?
I'm scared. Do it.
Okay. So what is something that you're curious about right now?
Curious about right now? Well, being a bit of a nerd, I'm a little curious to see how AI is going to evolve and be usable in more commercial software applications. AI was something I was involved in very early in my career, and it went through a similar hype cycle. And then we entered what we call the AI winter, where it all died down and people realized that the bots weren't taking over. But I think the confluence of the internet and very large amounts of data and so forth have really changed the game. So I'm excited to see how that's going to evolve from a technology standpoint. So that's something I'm curious about.
What do you understand today about your life that you didn't understand a year ago?
Well, a year ago, that my daughter would get engaged.
And how you would feel about that, I'm sure.
Oh, no, I'm very, very excited. Very excited that her boyfriend finally pulled the trigger. So that's what we were engaging in our group family text just this weekend. So we're all excited.
A beautiful new season of life.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm a big fan of marriage.
Complete this thought. I wish I had paid more attention when
I was taking typing class in high school, because I dropped that to preserve my GPA, and it turns out I've been in a career that's required me to type for my entire life, and I suck at it.
Oh, that is so funny.
I type with sort of maybe 5 or 6 fingers, and I guess that makes me think about my code a little more closely because I'm so slow as a typist. But I guess it helped me get into college, but it probably would have been smart for me to hone my typing skills when I was in high school.
So what is a film that you can watch over and over again and never get tired of?
Okay, now you're cheating. That wasn't in the list. A film. That's a good one. Dodgeball is pretty hilarious.
I've
It's
seen that one.
I'm a boomer, so
Yeah.
and I guess at this point, Father of the Bride is going to
Yes.
be a key one that I plan to rewatch. So we'll stick with those. We'll stick with those.
So, what experience are you currently seeking to challenge or support your growth?
Well, right now we're wrestling with how and when to grow our company because we've run it. I say we because the company that that I lead today is a massive company of 2 people and a dachshund, and so my colleague is my former Princeton roommate who I met at the first day of Princeton, and we've run this company together. And a big part of our company culture is the fact that when you pick up the phone to call FamZoo, that you're talking to either Bill or Chris. And what's really neat about that is that you're talking to someone who understands everything about the company and can help you. It's so disappointing when you reach a customer service person who's clearly reciting a script and is not empowered to help you. And so a really neat thing about FamZoo, even though we're servicing over 10,000 families now, we still handle all the customer support ourselves. And it's a really odd and magical experience, if you will. I mean, not to pat ourselves on the back, but it is very unusual that when you call customer support or email customer support or reach out on Facebook, that you're talking to really the founders of the company, and they can do everything from change the code on the fly to explain things. And the challenge is, how do you scale that? Because, we're no spring chickens anymore. So, answering phones at all hours of the day and so forth is pretty challenging. So, the challenge is, how do we grow that and maintain that magical feeling, because we feel so strongly about it.
So imagine that your 109-year-old self had access to a time machine. They jump into that time machine and they arrive to this very moment in time. They climb out, they sit next to you and give you advice. What would they say?
Probably hire somebody in customer service.
Or you won't make it this long.
Yeah, you're going to burn yourself out.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's an excellent question. That might be it. I'm very blessed, so I'm extremely happy, and I guess my biggest worries revolve around, the future of my children, and hoping that they have as are able to find as meaningful and rewarding a life as I have, but not doing what I'm doing, just to themselves along whatever their own metric is. And so, being the father of 5, I guess all my worries really tend to center around outcomes for my children, and just making sure that they know that my wife and I are here to be a resource for them. And if they ever need our help, we'd love to help them. And otherwise, we'll stay out of the way.
Yeah. Aww. Okay. So thinking about your life, if you had to break up your life up to this point into 3 chapters and give each chapter a title, what would they be?
Well, I don't know. I have to think about the clever names of the titles, but I guess the clear segments would be, up through college. And then my wife and I got married the summer we graduated. So, there was sort of my life as a child and young man, single. And there wasn't much time as a young man that I wasn't single, because we got married right away, and we've been married for 35 years. And the next distinct break for me would be becoming a father. And that has been the greatest achievement in my life by far, and the most humbling experience by far. And because I think I was a very I was one of these people who, when I saw a child misbehaving, I was like, what's wrong with those parents, right?
Oh, you were one of those.
I was very intolerant, as a very as a youngster, and I was kind of convinced that that parenting, it was responsibility of parents to control the behavior of their children, and it was a quick education that how naive and narrow that view was, and that parenting is the most humbling exercise that I've ever been through. And my kids have taught me far more than I ever taught them in terms of being an empathetic and understanding human being. And so for me, being a parent has been transformative. And then I think the next major change for me was basically leaving the traditional Silicon Valley corporate world to start FamZoo 13 and a half years ago, where I was really looking to just see if I could build something completely from scratch on my own, just because I happen to be a software developer, so I had the tools. It's an exciting era. I mean, with if you can build software, you can build an entire company, and so I just think that's amazing. And so I wanted to see if I could do that myself, just from scratch. So that's what I've been doing, and do it in a way that tightly aligned with my values and my interests. And so that's been the journey for the last 13 years. So now we got to go back and retrofit fancy titles to that.
Wow. I mean,
I don't know if I could do that. Insolent kid to moderately thoughtful adult to mission-driven entrepreneur. Maybe.
Wow. Yeah, those are some big experiences, big jumps there too.
Well, I'm an old dude, so I'm boomer.
So you have accomplished what many of us hope to get to. You found a way to layer all of these phases of your life to help you drive where you are now and create something for the generations that you'll be leaving behind, in essence, with your legacy. How did you get started in your line of work? If we go back to chapter 1, was this always an interest that you have, and how did it evolve to where you are now?
I fell into my professional passion, which is computer science. I grew up in Silicon Valley, as did my father, as did his father. And my father was an entrepreneur, and he founded a company called Spectrophysics, which was the first company to commercialize lasers. And this was in about 1959 or so, just when the Valley was starting out. And so I grew up in that entrepreneurial, I can't even say it, entrepreneurial environment.
Yeah.
Back when there was mostly apricot orchards around here. And I didn't have, other than really being interested in entrepreneurship and just being immersed in that environment, I didn't have any particular keen idea of what I wanted to do in high school, because we didn't really think about those things in high school. But so I just decided, well, my dad had an electrical engineering background, so that's what I'll go into. So some deep thought there. And so when I arrived at Princeton, I was in the EE program, the electrical engineering program. But at that time, they didn't even have a separate computer science department, so they just lumped computer science into it. And so it was the EECS, so Eeks Geeks, they called us.
Wow.
And so I took my first computer science course at college, and there were kids there who had built computers, so I was a little behind. And that was the first C- I ever got in my life.
Was it really?
Yes. And in fact, the person that helped me pass that course, because I was a tennis player at the time, so I was playing on the tennis team and not doing as much homework as I should, but the person who helped me pass that course is my colleague today, Chris Buford, who runs the company with me. And so he created a monster. I was very competitive, so I was very angry that I was getting a C-. And then I really fell in love with computer science, initially just because I was irritated because I was getting my butt kicked in it. But we had a visiting professor at Princeton who taught the compilers class, which is sort of a notoriously difficult class. And the amazing thing about this professor was that he never ran your program. He read it. So he read all of our programs and he commented in the margin about how you were approaching the problem, the style that you were using, how it could be better. And so he really unlocked at least for me, I mean, he changed my life. And, it was just the combination of the time that he was putting in and what he was teaching was a craft and not like just a flat skill or whether it worked or not. It was all about the craft. So at this point, I've forgotten what the question was, but anyway, that was a life-changing moment for me.
Yeah. So how you started in your industry, in your line of work?
Okay. So it was moderately on point.
Perfect. Yeah. So
that's how it all started. And then after college, I did an internship at Xerox PARC, which was where the mouse and all those crazy things were invented. And we got to sit around in beanbag chairs and act like intellects. And so I did a brief summer internship there, and then my wife was getting her PhD at UCLA, so we went down to Southern California. I like to call it doing time in Southern California. See, people from NorCal think that they're superior to people in SoCal and vice versa. So anyway, so we spent a little time, spent 6 years in Southern California. She got her PhD in biochemistry.
Interesting. So what were your goals at that point? You are newly graduated, you're married, you've learned all these new skills, these new crafts, and you're thinking, I'm going to go in and take on corporate America. Was that the goal, or was the end goal always to do something on your own?
As my dad always counseled me, Bill, it's the people and the ideas. Just focus on that. And so I just truly enjoyed writing software, and I was just looking for interesting stuff to work on. And it was such a wonderful, I mean, I'm very fortunate to have a career in, or have, an professional interest in something that was very readily hireable. Not saying that in a very articulate way, but basically, if you were a strong software developer, you're going to find a job, and you kind of had the luxury to a degree of picking and choosing where you would work. And so, the initial company that I worked for was trying to make a database machine. So they were trying to relational databases were just coming out. And they were trying to make a hardware machine that was optimized for managing data, which is very interesting because that's kind of come back around. Customized hardware solutions have come back around in the age of the web, but that was a very somewhat radical idea. Company went out of business, so that was an interesting experience. One day we showed up and there were locks on the back door. Well, first, a month ahead of time, the hardware team got laid off. That should have been a clue to me that a company that's making a relational database machine that suddenly doesn't have a hardware department is probably in a bad situation. But what was really wonderful about that experience was, and should have been another clue to me that this company would go out of business, was that they would take some kid right out of college and have them work on one of the hardest software things around for databases, which is the query optimizer. So I should have known right there that they were in big trouble. But for me, it was fantastic because I learned so much because I was given a ridiculous amount of responsibility very young.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a pretty common theme in my early career, was just getting a lot of responsibility, probably because there weren't a ton of software developers around. And so as a pretty young person, I was given probably more responsibility than I deserved. And so that company went out of business, and then that's when I got into the artificial intelligence business. There was a company down there called Inference that was doing what's called rule-based expert systems, and they were building expert systems that would look for fraud detection and things like that. in transactions, and it was a general purpose tool for reasoning about things using this rule-based technology. And so I got involved in that, and it was fascinating, really exciting stuff. And that company ultimately went out of business as well long after I left. But so I worked for what I called start downs for
that's a great
at least
phrase.
2, which were fantastic learning experiences for me. No harm, no foul. I got a paycheck. We were living in married student housing, so our expenses were minimal. And so it was just all about the people and the ideas, and that was fun. And then when we came back up to Northern California, that's when I started looking for a job in the Bay Area. And I read an article in the Wall Street Journal about this company, Oracle, with this crazy founder, Larry Ellison, who was this brash, pretty annoying person, quite frankly, and how how he would just get speeding tickets on Belmont Avenue and not care, So I was like, I'm not sure I want to interview at this place because my headhunter or whatever you call him at the time was sort of saying, come interview at Oracle because it's this hot new company. I guess the way to think about Oracle in those days, this was 1990, it's probably like what Facebook was like, 10 years ago, or, it was like they were, Oracle had just become a public company, and companies went public earlier back then. So it had its footing, but it was still very young. And so fortunately, Oracle had 2 founders, Larry Ellison, who was very brash, but very, very interesting to work for, and Bob Miner, who was the co-founder. He was kind of the alter ego. So he was the quiet software nerd. And Bob was fabulous, an amazing person. He unfortunately passed away, but he was amazing. So I came in and interviewed with Bob, and I was convinced that I was massively intelligent because I'd been working on artificial intelligence. So I proceeded to regale him with stories of my massive, clever algorithms that I've been working on. He would just quietly say, "Oh, that's really interesting. That's very similar to what I was doing in 1958.
Oh my goodness.
And so I was like instantly humbled by this guy. And he did it in a completely non-obnoxious way. And I realized, I got a lot to learn here. And so I thought that I had worked for these start downs. So I thought I'd try a company that was showing some success. And, I'd spend a little time at this, quote, established company because it was much bigger than any company I'd ever worked for, and ended up staying there 13 years.
Wow. Was it in these 13 years that you transitioned into chapter 2, fatherhood?
Yes. We moved up to the Bay Area May of 90. So that's when I started at Oracle, and our daughter was born in November of 90. So that was right at the same time. And that's also really when I made the transition from being an individual contributor as a software developer to being a manager, and then an executive at Oracle. It was a similar pattern where they gave us ridiculous amounts of responsibility early on, which was, I don't know how great it was for the company, but it was great for me. Because I grew, tremendously in terms of leadership skills. I had a fear of speaking to anyone that dated back to the 6th grade, when I, for whatever reason, ran for class president and against, I'll still remember it, Risa Cooper, who actually took it seriously, and so there was a class assembly, and they said, "Okay, it's time for you to give your speeches." And I said, "Speech?" So Risa got up and gave this eloquent speech, but unfortunately when she said, "Now I can't do something crazy like put Coke in the water fountains, Coca-Cola in the water fountains," everyone thought she said she was going to put Coca-Cola in the water fountains and thought she was crazy. And then I got up and I was petrified. I froze. I mumbled, "Thank you," and I sat down. And I was just mortified and humiliated, and I won. And Risa hated me because she said, "This is not a popularity contest." And I was like, "You're right. I thought your speech was awesome." I was mortified and afraid of public speaking from that day forward. And not until I got to Oracle and received media training did I finally get over that fear. And so that was very transformative to me. I still get nervous when I give speeches and interviews and things like that, but it's kind of a healthy nervousness, and it dissipates very quickly once you get into it. But that's a tremendous life skill, to be comfortable on a stage. And, nothing is more uncomfortable than watching someone who's uncomfortable on stage. It's just cringeworthy, right? And so the skill of being able to put people at ease while you're making a public presentation and entertain them while being informative is an amazing skill. And if I were to advise people on a skill to develop beyond like some sort of technical skill, which I happen to be a fan of, that would be it. I mean, that's an incredible skill to be able to articulate yourself in a verbal way and make people feel comfortable absorbing those messages.
It's interesting to think about that the media training helped you with that. And I agree, it's such an important skill to have, and one that we don't spend enough time on. Were you an executive when this was offered to you, or were you?
I was. I gradually, I got to where I was very comfortable talking to my team, or small teams. But this was, I ultimately was the vice president of the developer tool. So I was expected to go on stage with, thousands of people and talk to them about like our tool strategy and stuff like that. So that was very like intimidating to me. Maybe kids are exposed more to media these days, but there's a big difference between being exposed to it and being the subject
in it. Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
and live. So that was training, yes, that I got. I think I was either a director or senior director or something like that. It was something that they extended to people who are going to be in a position where they had to give presentations.
It's also interesting, the correlation of the experiences that we have as children, how they shape and show up later on in our adult life, right? So when it comes even to the app that you built, the software that you're building to help children, it's so imperative that we take the time when our children are young, because there's so many different new ways that we can show them the importance and the value of saving and investing and giving. But the tools out there like the piggy bank are so tough to do that sometimes. So at what point in your life as a father did you go from, this piggy bank isn't working, to the next level, and then eventually to where you are now?
Well, it's as much about teaching the children as it is providing the excuse for the parents to engage with their kids. And, the interesting thing about money, this author, personal finance author, Ron Lieber of the New York Times, has a good saying, which is, every conversation about money is really about values. And so I got involved in it because when our two oldest were in middle school, I was realizing, hey, we haven't taught these kids anything about managing that critical resource known as money. And there wasn't all the products. I'm a very sort of hands-on person, and so I was looking for some hands-on way, and I was thinking about allowance, and I was thinking about the abstract notion of a bank account and wanting to teach the kids about bank accounts, but the bank accounts at the time certainly weren't really amenable to using with young kids. And so that's when I started creating like a bank of dad and a spreadsheet, where the kids would have their own account, and they would earn money and the account balance would go up, and they would spend money and the account balance would go down. And so if they wanted to buy something, they had to check with me what their account balance was before it was purchased. So it was just a way of putting I prefer to call allowance a budget,
Yes.
because allowance sounds like a handout. what I was looking for was a constraint, a governor on spending, and to force kids to make decisions about what they were going to trade-off decisions, because everything is really about trade-offs when you have a finite resource. And so, so it started out just as this very simple set of spreadsheets. And then being a software nerd, and 5 children, I got a little tired of the kids wandering into my office and asking, what their balance was. So I wanted to enable them to be able to sign in and see it themselves. So I built a very simple web app, which was sort of FamZoo, -1, version -1, where they could just sign in and see their balance. And then over time, it just sort of started to become more elaborate because, I wanted them to know that, hey, if you keep your paws off your money, it can grow. So I'm going to pay you Bank of Dad compound interest. And if you, I want you to realize that it's possible for money to earn its own money if you just don't spend it, and you seek out a return on your investment through compounding or compound interest. And so, I added the compounding to the program, and then I added separate buckets because just the notion of having functional buckets dedicated to certain things like spending and saving and giving, partitioning your funds according to a purpose makes a lot of sense. It's a good fundamental personal finance skill. And so, over time, these things just sort of grew and expanded. And then around that time, I decided that I was going to leave the company that I was at, which was Elance, which was the predecessor to a company called Upwork today. And I was running the engineering there, and kind of decided it was time for me to try to start my own company because I was in my mid 40s, and I kind of felt like if I didn't do it then I wouldn't have the opportunity. So, and I saw that my kids were learning what I felt were valuable lessons through this tool, and so I decided this was the thing that I was going to try to take out there and create on my own.
Raising children in itself is hard enough, right? But then creating a company.
I think they raised me.
Yes, they really do help us see a lot of ourselves through them. But how do you keep your company mission driven and rooted in its values and in its core?
I do it because I have the luxury of not having to take outside money. And I think that is a luxury that I truly appreciate. And I don't subscribe to the theory of go big or go home. I went home. I've been involved in many. I fundamentally believe in venture capital, and I think it's a wonderful tool to grow companies, and so I don't really have a problem with it per se. But I wanted to run the company in a very particular way, and I wanted things to remain very focused on the mission. And I didn't want to feel like we were being pushed to do unnatural things to force growth. And so the nice thing is that we have a very patient investor. It's me. And so we only became cash flow positive at the end of last year. That's 13 years. And that's fine by me. So growing at 20 to 40% year over year is fine by me. That's absolutely fine. I don't need a hockey stick. And so I appreciate that I'm in a very fortunate position to be able to think that way. But I also think it's just kind of part of my personality. I'm okay with the long slog.
Yeah. And I'm sure that, not that I'm sure, but I know that this has helped a lot of the families and how they interact with what you've been able to build for their children. Because I can say this, I remember my first moment with my child, my oldest son, and the lesson that we all had to learn around what he thought money was and isn't, right? When we all know that children think money grows on trees. But I remember even from the day that he started tumbling and walking as a toddler, it starts with mine, grabbing things, and then it becomes mommy every time we go to the store. can I have this? Can we buy this?
Right.
And
So a lot of,
then,
I mean, I don't mean to interrupt, but a lot of
no,
people
go
say,
ahead.
like, when do we start teaching our kids
Yes,
about money? And it's like the first time they ask you for something at the store, because they know enough at that point to have that. They're asking for something. They want something. And that's when they can start to realize that there are constraints and governors on what they want. And you can put them in charge of that decision. It's like magical. Once they have some of their own resources, and it's like, it's no longer, mommy, I want that. It's like, you get to say, well, can you afford it? Or do you want to buy it? And that's a completely different calculus. It's easy to have mom and dad buy stuff for you. When it's your money, not so simple.
yes,
And it's like a magical elimination of whining almost. It's like, oh, well, I have my own resources. I'm gonna decide what I spend on, and it's very empowering. And so I think that's a magical transformation. And I think parents do a disservice to their kids when they think, oh, this is, little Johnny or Susie can't understand this. This is beyond their capability. I mean, the funny thing is, meanwhile, little Johnny and Susie are showing the parents how to use their iPhone, right? Like, it's like the kids
yeah,
get stuff very
they
quickly. All they
do.
need is a little explanation.
They are very
You know,
capable of it. And they've said that as early as 5 kids understand the concept of saving and spending.
mhm.
And their understanding of it evolves too. And they're very clever. They get smart with how to work around some of
Well,
the
you should
spending.
sit on some of our customer service calls, where kids, break into mom's FamZoo account and wreak
Oh, that
havoc.
is
So the neat
so
thing
funny.
about FamZoo is it's a closed system. Like, you get into FamZoo, you can't pull money from the parent's bank account. You can just move money around within the family. Now, of course, they can
Yeah.
go purchase things on their cards or whatever, but we're very careful not to ever pull funds. You always push funds into FamZoo, because
Yes.
little Johnny and Susie are pretty darn clever about breaking into. Like they say, most fraud is like an inside job.
Yes.
So that's something that kids learn early. That's not cool.
And here's the thing. So my little one, he got to a point where he started saying, "Okay, I'm gonna start working, find jobs so that I can earn the money that I need to." And then he gets to the point where he's earned his money, and the first thing he said to us, and I will always remember this day because this is the day that it dawned on me that I had to go back and reassess everything that I learned about money so that I could understand everything I needed to reshape for him based on this one statement. But he goes, "Mommy, can you take me to the store? I need to go find places where I can spend my money. Or I need to spend my money." He goes, "Where can I waste my money, mommy?" And I go, "What have I done?"
Well, the neat thing is that often that's how it starts, and then they buy a couple of things that are completely ridiculous, immediately become tired of them, and realize, wow, poof,
Yeah.
it went away. And so I think one of the hardest things for parents is to let them have that experience, and then for the kid to realize, I don't
Yeah.
have any more money left, and that wasn't that great. Like, for my daughter, I remember one of the big moments was the chiffon gown that she bought for senior prom. She had a budget for her clothing budget, and she's decided that she absolutely needed to have that dress. And I gave my best fatherly advice was, I don't think that's a great idea, but if that's what you want to do, knock yourself out. So she blew her entire clothing budget on that gown, and wore it once, and then had to go cold turkey on clothing, for the remainder of the year. And that was better than any lecture that I
Yes.
could give her. And furthermore, I wasn't the bad guy. She made it was her decision, and she, um, you know, gra- took responsibility for it and grappled with the consequences. And so I think, letting the kids deal with those consequences and learn that, is incredibly powerful thing to learn early on. And
Oh, absolutely.
like a lot of there are experts today that say things like, uh, you know, having a debit card is too intangible for kids. And so they should learn with, cash and coins. Well, they can start with cash and coins. It's fine. But what world do you think they're living in? Like, they ain't going to be no cash and coins when they're like growing up. So
Yes.
why aren't we just training them as soon as we can on the pitfalls and nuances of electronic money? Like, let's expose them to the things that they're going to run into with guidance, of course. You don't just let them run wild, but this whole protect kids can obviously go too far in both directions. Kids need to be introduced to things that are both beneficial and potentially harmful to them in a guided way. Social media would be a great example, right? Like, kids are going to be exposed to social media, and it's a very good debate as to when we should allow them to be exposed. But I don't think withholding that exposure until, say, they're in college is probably a good idea either. So that is, it's true of a lot of things. And I think that money is a good example. I want them to kind of get their sea legs with money before they leave the nest. Otherwise, they could do all kinds of massive damage. If their first exposure is something serious, like getting into massive credit card debt, I would rather that they, get into some debt with the bank of dad and realize that debt is not free, and learn that early with small stakes and no impact on their credit rating, rather than learn that as a young adult and really get themselves into some serious damage.
It's so very true, because it's data that we're getting in essence, right? Without the data, we don't know what new strategy to take or how to guide them. And really, the biggest opportunity that we have is in the first 18 years that we have with them to take the data from them exploring and experiencing and engaging in life so that we can redirect. And if we try to control or hide what's really out there, we as parents really miss out on the opportunities to guide and mentor our children.
Yeah, and one neat thing that you said, you're talking about your son's behavior causing you to reassess how you think about things. The really beautiful thing about teaching your kids about money or life or whatever is it forces you to confront your own attitudes about it and clean up your own habits. So, FamZoo, the company, is really a trick. It's a trick to help parents.
Look at that.
Because what they end up doing is, we guide them through setting up, buckets for spending, saving, and giving. Well, a lot of parents aren't being disciplined about that themselves, and they're just looking for a nudge to force them to do some of those things. And so it's very fascinating, and I've certainly seen it in my own life where teaching my kids about things forced me to confront my own performance and be more thoughtful about it. And you're basically going on a journey together, which is really fantastic.
You really are. It's interesting because I will say this, even some concepts that I've learned later in my life, my son is learning way earlier in his life about investing and compound interest and his 401k and all these important tools to really help you build wealth. That's one component of it, but how to manage it responsibly is another layer of it, right? Because as my son started to get older and we were past the stage of, well, let's just put some money away and try to get past the instant gratification part, which is probably one of the most difficult parts. And now let's start thinking about how we can make your money make money for you, right? My son is very visual. He loves to be able to see it. And the idea of the concept of mom and dad bank, which for us was a sheet of paper where we were keeping up with how much he put in and the interest, the return that he was getting, his compound over time. And we would forget to go back in and look at his weekly balance and add in the compound interest. And it would tear him down. And he would think, Mom, what is wrong with this bank? And why are we in the 1900s? And I was running into this problem where I felt, here's my son who is so engaged in this concept and is a visual learner. And I'm excited about this, but it's so hard to keep up with the process.
Yes, absolutely. And you point out some wonderful things there. You can run a family bank in a process with pencil and paper. And a lot of people do, and that can be very effective if you can stay on top of it. But the neat thing is if you automate some of those things, you can really ensure that you get the repetition that you need. And kids need a ton of repetition. So what I like to do with the compound interest is, instead of it being some sort of annual thing, or they review a statement every quarter and they say, wow, I earned a cent, who cares?
Right.
I like to give them a ridiculously awesome interest rate that compounds weekly. And then they get a text message every week that says, you earned 2 cents this week, you earned 5 cents this week, you earned 10 cents this week, right? And so it's that constant repetition, and they're getting an alert on their phone that says, you got your Bank of Dad interest or Bank of Mom interest. And it's that repetition that I think is really critical. Now, with older teens and getting away from something that has anything to do with FamZoo, my favorite personal finance hack is what one journalist called the family 401k, and it's stuck with me forever. And so once teenagers get that first summer job, I opened up Roth IRA accounts for each of them. And I was in a position where I could make the maximum contribution for them as a gift. Now, many families don't have those resources, but you might source those gifts from the rich Uncle Joe, or the relatives who don't know what to give Junior for the birthday, and it's like, all right, well, here's instead of something ridiculous, here's a very neat thing that you can do, which is basically set up this Roth IRA. And the neat thing about Roth IRA is it has sort of a trifecta of wonderfulness, which is you have to work to qualify. So, you have to get like that W-2 earning job as a teenager, and so you only get the match if you work. So that's a good thing. And then the money is being put away in something that theoretically you shouldn't pull out until you're an old boomer like me. And so it's a long-term thing. And you get an excuse to talk about investing every year, because you're not going to leave it in cash. You got to invest it in something. So you have that opportunity to talk about, hey, what's an index fund? What's a low-cost index fund? And how's that going to compound? And so you get this excuse to have this conversation every year, which initially is met with eyeball rolls and who cares, Dad? And when they're in high school, and then when they get into college, they get a little more interested. And then when they get out of college, you're like, oh my God, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for basically creating that habit where every month, every year we made a dollar cost averaged investment into something, right? Like they experienced like, oh, 1 year the stock market was way down and we got more stock, and 1 year it was way up and we got less. But over time, we weren't trying to time the market or any of that stuff. We were investing over time, over the long haul, and look what's happened in decades. Amazing, right? And I think that's a life changer. It could be a life changer for kids, that they have essentially a nest egg that was started when they were 16.
Yes.
It's an incredibly powerful lesson. I didn't learn what an index fund was until I was in my 40s. I was just lucky that, almost all my personal wealth was in Oracle stock,
Yeah.
That is a very precarious situation. I was lucky. If I'd known about index funds, I would have diversified myself, and that would have been a much smarter thing. So, but if you could learn some of those basics as a teenager, wow, that's powerful.
It's transformational. And when I think back on my own history with my family, it's certainly not something that finances were not talked about, right? We come from poverty, generational cycle of poverty. And so as I was growing up, I knew that one of the things that I wanted to do was to break that cycle and to do something different for my son, which meant that I had to challenge myself to become financially literate in ways that were literally reading books at the library on how to teach investing to children. And that's how I understood the jargon words, the concepts, the landscape, and little by little building upon that. So I can begin teaching it to my now 12-year-old who has invested in the stock market, and he has index funds, and he has a little nest egg that he is building, and he's already charted out where it's going to be by the time he reaches 18. And he's excited about being able to say I'm going to graduate at 18 and tell all my friends that I have this in the stock market. And
some people might be thinking like, oh, great, Bill. So is it all about money, or why is it important for your teenager to learn how to amass funds? And to me, it's all about, if there's an emergency in the family and you have the resources to take care of it, you're not relying on a loan shark or high interest credit card debt to take care of an emergency. I mean, it means that you have security. It doesn't mean, it's not about yachts or Teslas or things like that. It's about freedom. And and ultimately, for me, I've been very fortunate because I largely did not escalate my lifestyle to keep up with my income. So by the time I reached my 40s and wanted to do something that was really mission driven, I had the resources and the freedom to do that without being beholden to outside money. And that's very powerful because it allows you to really control the mission and values of the company, which might sound a little, I don't know, controlling, but heck, if you believe really strongly in some mission, then you want to have the freedom to pursue that. But also, more importantly, if there are emergencies in your family or whatever, and you have your own financial resources, and you can be the backstop for your family, not have to rely on outside resources, that's incredibly powerful and liberating. It's an amazing freedom. So
I have a story to share about that, just to kind of highlight what you just said there. And I talk about this with my children all the time. Money is not the key driver to happiness. It's an option, and it gives us, and it's a way for us to also give back to those who need it as in times, and to also practice the core values, like you said, we talk about in discipline. So when my youngest was beginning to save, he did not like the concept of having to wait and put his money to give to charity. It was a little hard for him in the beginning, right, as a young child, but he did it. And I remember the day, and he was maybe about 9 years old, that my mother had came over, and she was experiencing a car issue, so some minor thing that was going to cost $80 to fix. And my mother still lives underneath the poverty line, and she was talking about the cost associated with it. My son ran over to his piggy bank, took out all the money he saved, and said, "Grandma, you're the reason that I've been doing this."
That's beautiful. And one of the things I really love about that is philanthropy can be so abstract to kids and people. And I think philanthropy it's most powerful when it's personal like that. And it's an amazing lift to everybody involved, to your son, because he feels, wow, I was able to help grandma, how special is that? That's fabulous. There's nothing wrong with large organized philanthropies, but just think how much more powerful that is, that he knows the recipient and can see the effect. And so it's something that I've really grappled with personally, as I've gotten more involved in philanthropy, is, what is the ideal philanthropic endeavor? And what's been really fun for me is I kind of view my day job as largely a kind of weird combo of philanthropy and entrepreneurship, because and that's why we care so much about being the ones who answer the phone, because we're connecting with, the eye opener for me is the demographic for FamZoo is everyone. I mean, it's every socioeconomic level. It's rural, it's city, it's everywhere in the U.S. And it's been very interesting for me to learn about, different people's lives. And it's funny how personal they become. Money is a very personal thing. They almost become like mini therapy sessions. And people are very trusting, and I don't want to abuse that trust in any way. And it's very insightful for me, and makes me a more empathetic human being. And people are amazed when they interact with a company that is empathetic. It's it's almost sad how freaked out they are when they're treated with empathy. And many times people are very hostile initially because they just can't believe that someone would try to help them. And so they will come off, and they're kind of conditioned this way to come off very hostile, like they're having a problem with their card or something, and they're just assuming that the company is going to try to screw them, right? And so they feel like they got to come out the gates and be really, hardcore. And then we're always like, how can we serve you? How can we solve this problem? And that just really takes people back. And it's almost a sad commentary on, some of the corrosive effects that we've seen of society. And so it's a delight to be able to run a company in a just completely different way. And again, that gets back to, I can only do that because I can afford to do that, and have that sort of financial independence to do that. So, I think that's interesting. It's a lot more gratifying than me spending my money on, Teslas and yachts and stuff, which first of all, I don't like being at sea, and I'm not a car guy. Now, bicycles, I might spend some money on.
There you go. Get a little exercise too while you're
traveling to see the kids.
Yeah. You're a prime example of making it all count, making it count so that you can create an impact in the world that we have today that's going to live generations after you. And I know it certainly has made a big impact within our family and the conversations that we're having. And it is a tool that my children were so excited to think they could have their own card. And my son,
yeah, that's pretty cool.
my son was like, "Mommy, it is about time." He said, "Please thank him for doing this," because he started to say he was going to charge me late fees for being late on depositing his compound interest because I had to have some skin in the game.
That's right. Everyone needs a little skin in the game.
And as we think about creating, consciously helping the next generation create generational wealth and health, we also want to remember that the statistics show about 70% of wealthy families lose their wealth by the second generation and 90% by the following. And that is the reason that it is so imperative that we equip this generation with the tools and the knowledge to manage that money. And it really goes into our values and the impact that we can create with it. Because as Bill said, it is beyond the Teslas and the yacht. It's the impact that we can create within our families, within our communities, and in the world through our work.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's an interesting phenomenon, the cycles of wealth, and how do you inoculate, if you're a successful person, like my father was, my parents are and were, how do you pass along the work ethic and values, where, let's face it, I didn't grow up struggling economically in any way. Everyone's got their emotional and challenges or whatnot, whatever dimension. And I never presume that somebody doesn't have any challenges. We just might not know them. They could be psychological. They could be anything. But it's a fact that I had no economic challenge whatsoever. And yet my parents were able to infuse me with quite a work ethic. I mean, I don't need to work.
Yeah.
I love working. And it brings purpose and meaning to my life. And profligate spending doesn't excite me in any way. And so, the interesting thing about being a successful person is you kind of rob your children of the ability to say that they're self-made people themselves. Because no matter what you do, they had a benefit.
Yeah.
And I think that that's perfectly fine. That it's about what you do with your life, no matter where you started.
Yes.
And there's no point in shaming people if they started from either end of the spectrum. It's really about evaluating how they use the resources that they have, and the skills and talents that they have, and we shouldn't we shouldn't judge people by their economic character any more than we should judge them by their skin color or preferences or any of that stuff. It's really about you do you. And so, having this notion of what Warren Buffett called an inner scorecard, where you have your own metrics that you hold yourself to, and that's how you judge yourself. Holding yourself to an inner scorecard, I think, is an incredibly valuable skill to pass along to our kids so they don't get wrapped up into comparisons that are meaningless or not important.
I love that. And today, our conversation is a testament to growing up on those opposite ends of the spectrum. But here our worlds are colliding with making something with what we had and wanting to make a difference beyond our own lives. And we thank you for what you've done, because I know, like I said, you have impacted my family today. And I am so excited for all of you listening who have children. Go to FamZoo.com. This is going to create some very fun and engaging conversations. It might be a little bit interesting in the beginning as you start to have the conversation of let's split some money off to savings if you haven't already, but the excitement of what your kids get to create for their future will be there. And that in itself, as parents, it's what lights our journey. So, Bill, as we wrap up the show, we love to have our guests leave our audience with a challenge. What challenge based off of our conversation would you leave our audience with?
I would say a very simple challenge. Next time you're out and about with your kids or a cousin or a youngster, just take the time to explain what just happened when you swiped your card or touched your phone to a device to pay for something. I mean, really get into it. Like, did you just pay for it, or are you going to be paying for it at the end of the month? And kind of go through that with a kid, because it's really interesting to ask them what they think happened, and then have an open-ended conversation about just see where it takes you. It could be a very interesting conversation sometimes. Sometimes they'll think it's total magic, and you get to have an interesting conversation about that. Sometimes they'll surprise you with how much they know. So have that conversation. Simple challenge.
How can our audience learn more about your work and get in contact with you?
Well, you just go to FamZoo.com. Now, FamZoo is short for My Family is a Zoo, because my family was a zoo, and that's where that ridiculous name comes from. But the good thing is, if people Google on FamZoo, there ain't nobody else there but us, because it's such a ridiculous name. So Google FamZoo.com or FamZoo, and you'll end up on our site. And from there, even if you're not interested in the cards or whatever, we have lots of resources and stuff about teaching kids about personal finance. So, and if you don't see what you want, just reach out and email us at service@famzoo.com. You'll either get Bill or Chris.
There you have it. And I'll be sure
unless we hire that customer service person.
Coming in the future.
That's right. Maybe when we get to 100,000 families.
There you go. Out of curiosity, for those wondering and the parents listening, where are your kids now with their financial literacy? Is the Bank of Dad still alive?
Yeah, well, we have our youngest is 18, so we are on the cusp of being empty nesters. Oh. And our oldest, like I said, is getting married and financially independent, which is wonderful. And then on down the line, we've got everything from a musician philosopher to a U.S. Army Ranger. So we've got a very diverse family. And that's been one of the wonderful things about being a parent, is just embracing the incredible diversity in our family. So
you've done a great job, and we're excited to hear what Chapter 4 has in store for you.
Yeah, bring it on. I got to make it to 105 so I can get back to that question at the beginning.
There you go. And to our listeners, the ball is in your court. I challenge you to take action, continue the conversation, and reach out to Bill to partner with him in your journey. You are listening to Flipping the Script. We'll see you on our next episode. Bill, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. This is a pleasure.
If you found even the smallest nugget of wisdom in this episode, share it with a friend, and your friend will thank you. Let's continue the conversation with like-minded leaders, and join us on Facebook at Go Flip the Script. Until next time, I challenge you to incorporate what you learned today to evolve your leadership impact.